what you're seeing is a bunch of different computers or a couple different display monitors that are plugged into dozens and dozens of different computers. So it looks as if it is a different IP address, a different person that's interacting with this content. And these exist all over the world. And some of them are for commercial reasons, trying to get, people to, buy your products and things like that. But then also in some instances, it's also nefarious reasons. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics. I'm your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we've got another episode of Freight Friends for you today. Grace Sharkey is back, and we got a lot to dive into. So, Grace, welcome back from Matt's.
Well, thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. I got my purple light on too, so we can kind of blend in scenery.
It's a
So
vibe.
it is a vibe. Yeah, nice little vibe today.
Springtime vibe. It's a good thing.
Sure.
So now, okay.
It's freezing.
Oh yeah, for you, for sure. Sorry. Down in Florida, we it's the pollen is everywhere, and it is so thick that you could just run your finger down like any type of equipment
gross.
outside, and your finger is just coated with pollen. It's kind of miserable, but it's just that time of the year where like you get a little used to it.
Yeah, I would get used to it very fast. It's better than rain. It's like rain for 4 days in a row. So I would take at least the sun out at this point right now. But hey,
yeah, that's always a bummer. I don't know how people in the Pacific Northwest do it with like little to no sun. It's something like 70 days out of the year that they get sun, and I'm like that. I would be miserable. But I guess, I don't really know like a good way to transition to this, but you just got back from Matt's. Are you headed to TIA?
I am not doing TIA. No, at least for now. I mean, life could change, right? No, that is next week. So I forgot what day it is. So no, I'm definitely not. I do have some interesting, I think, private events actually coming up that I'll be attending. So kind of keep those quiet. Events. Yeah, I'm a private event gal now. So I'll keep those under wraps until those come up. Working on some cool things with some partners, but yeah, no, I got a lot of like a birthday family events and stuff in April, so I'm kind of trying to not travel if anything this month. But we actually we're recording this week for our FreightWaves small carrier and owner operator summit that's coming up. So actually I'm going to be interviewing with Kevin Rutherford, which is kind of cool. Funny. If you're full circle of like the radio, kind of funny.
Yeah.
And Chad Boblet. So which I'm like two very prominent individuals in that space. And honestly, it's like a lot of times I do those interviews and I'm like, I not that I'm carrying it, but I like to bring the energy. And those are going to be two individuals that I'm going to not have to worry about energy at all.
Yes.
So.
It's definitely one of those situations where if you bring like a fellow podcaster or broadcaster on a show, you have to limit the number of questions that you're asking because they know to just go. As soon as you lob it up, they're going to dunk it down, and that dunk is just going to take, probably considerably longer than a typical guest would answer. But Kevin Rutherford, you have to, I don't know if you'll have time, but if you do have time, you should ask him about prepping for a disaster, because it's fascinating. I'm not as much of a prepper as Kevin is. I'm trying to get my prep game up, but basically like bug out bags, having having like survivalist type. Yes, I love talking about that. And when I found out that he did that, we probably spent a good 20 minutes of our hour-long conversation not talking about trucking, but talking about how to doomsday prep, which is good conversation. So
I don't think that'll make the owner operator summit, but maybe it will. And we only get like 15 minutes, which sucks. I mean, like, we spend, this is like a 2-hour show for us. So 15 minutes goes by so fast. But I think I might chat with him on broker transparency a little bit, because I know he's got some strong opinions on that. And I think the two of us together can hopefully maybe settle that conversation into something more realistic than sometimes it turns into. But Yeah, it should be a good one. So everyone should go check that out. I don't know when this is coming out, but worst case, if this comes out after the event, those videos will all be on our YouTube page at Braylives
Yes,
as
so
well.
I will make sure I'll try to put I'll make a note of it in our show notes, our private show notes, so then that way when this goes live next Thursday, hopefully, most of those shows will be live either around that time or very soon afterwards. When does
It's the
the small carrier?
24th. It's the
Oh, okay.
24th, so we
All
got
right, good.
plenty of time. Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, you'll have to check YouTube for that because we won't have a
Yeah.
link to share with
Yeah.
you. But you
Exactly.
just got back from MATS. Speaking of like
Yes.
conference travel, MATS is a conference I've never been to, but it's regarded as what the largest trucking conference in the country, maybe the world. I'm not exactly sure, but lots of cool big trucks. It takes place in Louisville in the spring of each year. Obviously, I think you're training people on how to say Louisville correctly, which is
Yes.
great. So we would start with a good place, especially as we head into Kentucky Derby season. Less than a month to go, or about a month to go before the longest running sport in American history gets started. I
Yes.
had to get
No,
my little plugs in there.
I was waiting for it. There it is. Yeah, there you go.
But tell us about it. What was because this is where a lot of truck drivers are at. So you could say like the conversation is probably going to be lively, but also probably going to address some top issues, concerns. What were some of those things that you saw at Matt's?
Yeah, well, there was, I think one of the coolest things there, especially for individuals that went and attended it and got to see kind of an action. The FMCSA did have their trailer leasing, truck leasing task force there. So it's the first time that the whole committee's been together at like a live event like that. And it was really interesting to kind of see that bureaucracy in play. I say that because I used to do like I used to work in politics throughout college and actually in high school as well, and it's like very interesting to kind of see how a lot of those discussions happen behind the scenes, and
Hmm.
it's how people like. What was interesting is they know the problems that happen. The committee was well formed. A lot of really great individuals to contribute to it, but it's like for me the bureaucracy of like, okay, so what's next? Like, when
Hmm.
are we gonna how is this going to become like how are we actually going to check these leasing programs, like what's the next step forward? So for all the carriers out there, I'd highly suggest that you reach out to the FMCSA or some of your even local representatives, and make sure that you're on them about those anything that FMCSA is working on that you either favor or don't favor, because that's a lot of times what gets that stuff pushed is actually coming forward and doing something about it. I saw Todd Spencer there as well, who is the president of the Owner Operators Independent Drivers Association, or OIDA.
Hmm.
And him and I always have really great chats because like they are so very much about, okay, ranting on Twitter or ranting on Facebook about something you don't like in this industry is one thing, but actually reaching out to people and getting something done and fixed is a whole nother process. So I believe it's fightingfortruckers.com. If there's any drivers listening out there that want to figure out how you can actually have your voice heard and not just blaring out into YouTube or on Facebook or Twitter, social media of some sort, you actually want to reach out to those people, go to fightingfortruckers.com, and they'll help you contact your legislative representative so that you can get a lot of this moving. And they tell you exactly what they're fighting for, and give you an opportunity to see exactly who's a part of these committees, and who your representatives are. Uh, Clearly, like if you don't know who our Department of Transportation secretary is, right, they've got all of those individuals on their site for you too. So I highly suggest that you go, yep, there she is, to the site and at least get connected with it. So it's good to run into Todd there as well. On top of that, I mean, it's interesting. It's a really, first off, it's a huge conference. Like, trying to think, the biggest one that I know I've been to with you, Blythe, is like Manifest probably. I mean, this is add a whole extra hall, if not a hall and a half, to
Oh wow.
Manifest, and that's how big this is. I mean, it's funny, like to like where we had the What the Truck stage slash truck parking club there in the West Wing, which is like so far away from the North Wing where they have this serious table. It's huge. It's massive because you have everything there from like Kenworth, right? Like the actual like OEMs to those who sell like custom chrome finishes
Hmm.
to companies that sell mattresses for your cabs
Oh,
to
cool. Huh.
t-shirt vendors to tech companies, right? So it's like anything that exists in the driver's like lifestyle is there. And I mean even down to recruiting, even for like the army and their logistics and things like that, like
Oh,
it's
wow.
all there. So yeah, it's one of those events where you almost like want to give yourself a day to like not have anything on schedule in order to
Mm.
walk through, and you I don't want to say avoid, but you almost like try to avoid running into anyone, or else you're just gonna get like super held up too. So it was a lot of fun, and
Popular problems.
yeah, well, but I will say too, what's nice there is like a lot of people don't know who I am as well, and so like this will actually be out tomorrow. So this article I'm working on will be out before this airs, but I'm doing an article on like 4 companies I met at Matt's, right? Like companies
Hmm.
I didn't know about or technology I didn't know about until I was there. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot like I like it a little bit because I can fly a little bit under the radar. There's a few
Mm.
rooms where it's like, okay, like the Uber Freight, C.H. Robinson rooms, truck stops, like those people, well, that hall in particular, I definitely know a lot of people there, but like the West Wing is a lot of very small vendors. I mean, parts suppliers, a lot of like companies from China and stuff there too.
Mm.
So it gets really
That's
interesting.
interesting, especially in front of an American, like, truck driver audience. I would
Oh yeah.
yes,
I mean,
that's
there's
very interesting.
because they're selling a lot of the pieces and parts of the vehicle that people
Mm.
are purchasing or using when something breaks down or they need to fix up the truck. So
How
it's
did drivers react to that booth or that situation, I guess?
I will say those booths in particular aren't the most like come talk to us. They're very like you're at a conference and you got the people that know how to like work a room and then the people are like I'm sitting down and you come to me if you want some
Mm.
help. They're very much you come to me if you want some help. But it's their people are coming up to them. I mean it's especially if you are a parts manager for a medium-sized trucking company, like you want to know what new technologies out there, what those parts cost, like so it's kind of the same thing for those out there who are tech, maybe CTOs or CIOs in a brokerage space or something like that at Manifest. The same thing here. This is our
Mm.
opportunity to see all the suppliers in one space.
What about so you said the article is dropping tomorrow.
Mhm.
Any other, sort of news takeaways that were, I guess make a big impact even just, a couple weeks after the event?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of driver recruiters there, which you would think like in this market, it's like that business must be super difficult. So it's
Mm.
interesting to kind of see how many of those that were there in particular. A lot of talks about, of course, I think the legislation that's happening for trucking in particular. Overtime pay is another one. Of course, speed limiters is another
Mm.
one. Also, of course, like diving into a little bit more of uh honestly even like freight tech. Like there's a ton of really small marketplaces that I hadn't even like heard of or aren't on my radar. So it's kind of like interesting to see like okay, yeah, there's like DAT, there's truck stop, but there's a lot of like really small applications that carriers still use as well on top of
Mm.
that. Um, a lot of recruiters there trying to recruit drivers. That was a big
Mm.
thing I definitely noticed this year around. And I think a lot of the pro talks in particular were just really discussing more of like overcoming adversity, really trying to make sure that the carriers know what they need to focus on in this market, what to expect when the market does turn, and just I really stayed alive during these times. But I will say this event gets really cool closer to like Friday, Saturday. It starts on a Thursday. Late Friday, Saturday, you start to get the families that come in. And so like to see kind of like these generations of drivers, right? Like people who their dads have been driving and now they're like coming. Like I was watching this girl at Truck Parking Club had this like uh, truck. It was, I mean, it's a pretty big truck, like that you could play around with a remote control. And if you could park it, if you could like back up, park it, you get like a prize. And there was this girl that
They
was
have
like,
such good marketing.
they don't even get me started. They killed it at this event. Uh, but they had this second booth, right, where you could do this, and there's this girl that was with her dad, and she was like, she did a great job, like trying to back up the truck and everything like that. Really young, maybe like 10, 11-ish. Um, but it's just like I was watching her like with her dad. She's like, "Dad, I did it." And he's like, "Yeah, like you're gonna be an awesome truck driver one day." And it's like, that's like what's cool is kind of seeing like this whole generation. I think next gen, they had actually brought in a whole class of like students on, I think it was Friday. So it's like there was like a whole group of students that was like got to walk around because it's actually,
That's
remember,
cool.
it is a free event. So I think that's why you get so many people that do come to it, and it's, I mean, plus
Oh,
on top of it,
interesting. Huh.
they do have a beauty show too. So I got some. The weather, honestly, the last 2 years that I've went has been like really bad, like just rainy. So I never really got a chance to go outside and like see the trucks, but I got to actually go out and like check out some of the lights on these bad boys. And like, oh man, what's really like a nice tanker truck, all shiny. Like there's a red one that was like so red and shiny. I was like, I want this.
I
Like,
did see a few of your
yeah,
videos from it, and it was just it's like the nicest looking trucks. I
yeah,
have heard though that a lot of them they don't actually use
no,
them to like ship goods. Like it's
yeah,
just pretty much for show.
yeah,
Like one of the trucks that I saw a ton of people taking a ton of videos from, they don't even drive it. So they tow it
yeah,
there and then they tow it away.
yeah,
So I saw of course some drivers like, oh, all show, no go. And it's like, well,
yeah,
the insurance costs alone for that
yeah.
truck because Matthew Leffler actually said that for a lot of those trucks that adding all of that extra stuff to it, like it makes it look nice, of course, but that's also extra insurance costs that you have to buy
Oh,
to cover those fancy items. And so that's why, for like that truck in particular, it's probably not going to be driven around. It's not going to be hauling anything from like point A to B, because the insurance costs are ridiculous because they have to cover every little
yeah.
new addition that you make to the truck.
There was I think my favorite one, there's a pig hauler that was clearly not actually moving pigs. It was like green, it had a bunch of green lights inside. So it's like, the livestock haulers, they have like the little holes in the side of
Mhm.
it, right? So they can all breathe. So it's just like green, like flying out. But they did actually have like as like a gimmick, right? Like they had brought pigs. There's like little baby pigs that were there too.
Oh,
I know. It was so cool. So
dang. Okay. I've been told for years that if this is a conference that I need to go to, my only problem with it is that it happens in Louisville, and I feel almost because that's my dad's side of the family, they're all from Louisville. So when my family comes from like that side of the family comes from like CSX L&R Railroad, and that's why they
uh
moved down to Jacksonville because CSX bought L&R Railroad, and so my dad's side of the family all moved from Louisville down to Jacksonville. And so to this day in Jacksonville, there's been several occasions where I've in the morning of like Kentucky Derby Saturday, I'll be at the grocery store like picking up a case of beer or something to drink, and you're in your whole getup and you will see other people in the grocery store in their same like Kentucky Derby, like
so
really
cool.
nice like church looking Easter Sunday type outfits. And you know exactly what they're buying for too, because it's a lot of Louisville fans, also a lot of Kentucky fans that reside in Jacksonville because of that merger years ago. But I haven't been back since I was like 16. And I feel like the first time I want to go back, I want to go back with my dad. I want to go back with like that side of the family so I can, kind of, I guess, pay tribute to it. And then
Yeah.
I guess couple in addition to that, my parents throw a huge derby party every year. This is going to be their last one. And so they've talked about, going up to Louisville in order to
Yeah.
watch the Derby for the first time. We've never done that before. We've always just held parties in Jacksonville for it. But we've talked about going up there. And so I'm like, oh, the timing of it is like not really conducive for me. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it up there next year. I feel like I got to go with my family first. And
Yeah.
then I can have the good excuse to like go up there for work.
Well, and bring them at that point. It's like
Well, then
it's
it's like back to back too. So it's like they're
true.
almost like too close together, for my family to be able to justify and afford like, okay, we're going to a trucking conference. Like they're probably not going
You
to
need to,
do.
like, rent an RV and just, like, come and camp up
Oh
there.
God, no, I'd kill myself.
Because they have, like, a whole camp like, that's I think this time I had to come back for a concert on Saturday, but next year, I wanna try to stay through Saturday to see the beauty show. Because at the end of the night on Saturday, they do, like, all the lighted trucks do, like, a parade and everything,
Oh, that's cool.
and they all, like, camp out in their RVs there and, like, the truckers slamming beers and hanging out, so it's
See,
like
if I was by myself, I would do that. If I'm with my family, there's no way I'm staying in an RV with my family for multiple days. I
yeah, no.
absolutely not.
Maybe my dad, like, my mom, maybe not so definitely not my
Definitely not my
sister.
brother. That's,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
my brother, we were very close, but, we're old enough to know when
Yes.
too much time is too much time.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, it's me and my sister. We shared a womb together, that was enough, like we did
Alright,
share
well,
a
that's
bedroom too, but still.
oh, I could never and even no, I couldn't. My fiancé and I live together, and we each have our own offices, and we each have our own bathrooms, and I feel like that is the
Nice.
key to a very happy, successful relationship, is that separate bathrooms, separate offices. It's you can have your own little space
Well, once you
and
get married, it's gonna turn into separate bedrooms, and it's,
oh, no, no, no. That will definitely that's where I draw the line. But in my own office and my own bathroom is fantastic. We have shared a bathroom and anytime we go
y
on a trip together, we're reminded of why having separate bathrooms is great because you can, both take a shower at, the different times or same time, you have options.
yes.
Hotel, you don't really have a whole lot of options.
True, 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 true.
Ugh, I don't know
That's
how to make a
funny.
good segue to this next topic because obviously we're going from something fun to something that's a little bit more, a lot more serious. Obviously, the Baltimore Bridge collapse that happened a couple of weeks
Yes.
ago definitely was one of those. I don't want to say like black swan moments. Do you think it's a black swan moment?
Um,
Because it is just
this is
one
kinda
one
this is
cargo
gonna
ship.
go into, like, kinda what we're about to talk about, but I think on the surface, it feels like a black swan moment. I don't think it's going to have the long-term effects of, like, maybe COVID. It
Yeah,
kinda reminds me of the Red Sea a little bit, where it's like, if you are in Europe, you're probably feeling the effects of it more than anyone is feeling here
yeah,
physically,
true.
right? So, I would say for the city of Baltimore, it's a
Yeah, yeah,
black swan
that's a
moment
great
for
point.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point because obviously they lost an entire bridge.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of updates since then. I know that they're starting to clear out. Salvage crews are now on site. I won't go into all of the details because there are far more smarter people, better experts. Sal Mercogliano with what's going on with
Mhm.
shipping is probably the best example here. Go follow him. He's doing almost daily updates on what's going on with that particular ship and the cleanup. So he has lots of experience, lots of really great insight there. And it's John Conrad with G
Yeah.
Captain is another one that's on it. So those two guys, go to them for the latest insight on what's going on with that situation because they have a really good handle on just the nuances and managing the political side of things with the military side of things and just trying to get stuff done as soon as possible and anytime you have those additional barriers, it's probably going to affect the timeline of things. But the
Yeah.
reason I bring this story up is because immediately after it happened, there was just a slew of conspiracy theories, people thinking that this was done on purpose, that it was a terrorist attack, that someone hacked into, the computer, the motherboard on the cargo ship, and it's like, no, it really was just an accident. And it was one of those situations where like you watch it, I don't necessarily call myself an expert in this industry, but I am on the quote unquote inside. You are as well. We know enough about these incidents to know that no, that was actually just somebody fucking up. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like a giant orchestrated event like 9/11 or something like that. Like it was just a very tragic, serious accident. But you saw all of the conspiracy theories that were forming from it. And that was really from like a people psychological thing to watch unfold. And it was almost one of those moments where I was like, I'm just gonna get off the internet for today because they're
Oh,
taking this a little crazy. Did you get that same vibe?
1,000%. And I think it was especially just like some of that stuff I try not to like even uh sorry, sick too, give any like support to it because that like helps it spread. Geez, hold on a second.
Take a drink of water.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com.
But it was one of those, I'll try to help out here while you drink some water. But from the outside, I think we talk a lot about, trying to find the sources, the nuances of stories. And for this particular example, watching the mob form that are not experts in any realm of logistics, maritime shipping, anything like that, come up with their own conclusions and specifically ignore the experts that were saying like, no, guys, this isn't it. It just wait. The patience, I think, of waiting. And I think that there's a multitude of factors that are playing into that, where these kinds of conspiracy theories and ideas catch on so quick, mostly because humans, like at a core level, we seek to understand things. And in a social media age world, we seek to understand things immediately. So it's the
Yeah.
immediacy of social media and wanting to understand why something exactly happened right away, when frankly, these things just take time. You have to research. You don't expect malice when stupidity or ignorance is probably at play. I don't want to say stupidity because there are a lot of smart people that are working within this industry. I think that I don't know the exact causes yet. And that's the point of, sort of bringing up this entire story, is that, we're going to be facing a lot of these issues very soon, particularly this year and in the coming years, because not only do we have the effect of social media and algorithms, but we also have the flip side of it where, we have AI that creating, especially around like content driven AI, where all you have to do is upload 30 seconds of your voice or video to a platform like HeyGen, and that platform will then be able to create videos and audio of you in the future saying whatever they want. And so we live in a world where we're going to have to start being more responsible with not overly reacting to news the second it breaks. And I think that we're going to have to also be in a situation where we recognize these things that are happening and trying to be the voice of reason among the people that we care about. So helping our, like parents and friends and family who don't necessarily know the nuances of how algorithms work and these types of things, and helping to them to avoid the conspiracy theory mindset, I think is the main reason why I wanted to bring this topic up.
Yeah, and I think you know, we talk about this like we've talked about conspiracy theories in the past. This one in particular makes me laugh because the real problem that people should be concerned with is almost the more obvious aspects. Like one, and you did a great job of showcasing like when this happened in Jacksonville, right? And you brought up the images of the dolphins, right? That those like concrete barriers that they put around, like what people should be concerned with instead of like this conspiracy theory of like who is attacking is just poor infrastructure around some of these ports and some of the big, like realizing like, oh wow, like all it takes is simply this really random series of events to take down a big piece of supply chain. And I mean, it is gonna, like we talked about, is it going to be a big deal? It's going to be a big deal, I think, to the military. That's a lot of where their those big tanks and stuff come into. It's going to be a big
coal
deal.
Shipments.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain items that we're gonna have a problem with, I think. And I mean, it'll get rerouted to appropriate places. Norfolk is down the street, but Norfolk actually is like not the best place to send trucks either. If you've ever driven to Norfolk Beach, there's only certain ways in and out. So it reminds me a little bit of like kind of like the Florida market, right? Like you're going to be paying extra for that roundabout. But it's like it's just funny to me that people like immediately go to these like crazy theories instead of being like, you know, how are we looking into these bridges, and like how often are we questioning the infrastructure that we have set up? Like why haven't we considered putting dolphins into this exact port? Can we or can't we? Like having instead like an intelligent conversation about what actually happened, which was an infrastructure failure, right? In a way, you
It
can
was
look at
also
it.
maintenance too, from
Yeah.
what John Conrad was explaining, because he hopped on a space, a couple days after it had happened, or I had hopped on a space to listen to John Conrad. Sal was also on it, and a couple other folks who are experts in this arena, and they said it was also there's two issues. So it could be a maintenance issue where you're checking things off. Maybe you're busy at the time, or you get distracted at the time and you okay something that you shouldn't have okayed, but you've okayed it 1,000 times before and nothing ever happened. And just
Exactly.
this time, is something tragic happened. Then there's also what John Conrad was talking about is the lack of tugboats in that particular port, in that particular situation, that if they still had tugboats assigned to the ship, then it wouldn't have, it could have prevented that thing from happening. And so what Conrad was suggesting is that it should be mandated now for every port in the country to have tugboats that escort you from your call all the way out to sea, escort them out there and get them away from the infrastructure, just to protect it, because it's a very simple, very easy to implement strategy that could be implemented tomorrow, today, as long as the government acts, based on, certain information and, I guess certain protocols that they put in place. But John Conrad was saying that that's a very easy fix to avoid this happening again. And this isn't something that will probably happen a lot, but to your point, the crumbling infrastructure that we have across this country, John Oliver did a study, or did a report on this a couple years ago, where I think the numbers were that Alabama has the most dams and structures and bridges in the entire country because of the way like their waterways are set up. But they have 2 people in the entire state that are responsible for invest or just checking up on those the infrastructure, the bridges, the dams and things like that, checking them to make sure that they're up to code, that they're up to par, and they're not going to be the cause of a traumatic accident. And so when you have situations like that, it's like a ticking time bomb that's just waiting to explode, and the right case circumstances that are happening or could happen.
Yeah, and to throw a hot opinion out there, it's how many people that tweeted or retweeted about the conspiracy theories or all that jazz, right, are going to retweet that information. Like none. So, that's like, I only take Twitter so seriously at some level, and I think a lot of people are the same, because it's like, okay, cool. Like you guys will retweet the conspiracy theories all day long, but you're not going to retweet this conversation or Sal's discussion on the, you know what I mean? And so that's
like,
what.
And that's where I think, helping to educate our loved ones to be more nuanced. It
Yeah.
feels like a losing battle at time, but I want to show this photo because this is kind of what we're up against. We've talked, or I've talked before at length about when certain news hits our news stations, it trickles down into social media, or a lot of times it hits social media first. But these foreign actors or foreign groups that
Yeah.
are responsible for chumming up outrage or
Yeah.
drumming up outrage based on whatever topic of the day is. These are real people powered by AI, powered
Mhm.
by different technological tools, bot armies. You probably heard that phrase. And so they get, and from this was a report that came down from Frontline. I think Vice also did a documentary on this where they visited these bot farms in like Vietnam and the
Yeah.
Ukraine, where they're given a list of this is a human employee. You're showing up for work. You sit down at your desk. You are given a list of topics that are making Americans the most mad today. And your job is to go into those posts in different Facebook groups and in different online communities and to promote that topic, and then have other bots accounts reply to that content with a dissenting view. So the
Yeah.
polar opposite view. And then it gets people going in the comments, but these are all by design. And
Yeah.
so they're feeding the algorithms, because the more comments means the more people that are going to see it. And if you can have people arguing in the comments, then that's going to make that post go insanely more viral. So this is a perfect example of how something like a infrastructure issue, a maintenance issue, we could have tugboats, protecting our bridges issue. You package that all up, and you can have, sort of gasoline on the fire of these different like bot farms and click farms. And take a look at this photo. It is one of the bot farms that's in Vietnam. Look at
So
this setup. It's
so
absolutely insane that
so crazy.
this goes on. Let me share this tab instead, because it's a little bit more eye popping. So what you're seeing, if you're listening to the show, what you're seeing is a bunch of different computers, or a couple different display monitors that are plugged into dozens and dozens of different computers. So it looks as if it is a different IP address, a different person that's interacting with this content. And these exist all over the world, and particularly in Eastern European countries, also East Asia countries, where these different setups exist. And some of them are for commercial reasons, trying to get, people to, buy your products and things like that. But then also in some instances, it's also nefarious reasons. Our good friend, I don't even know if I should mention this in the context of this conversation, but our good friend Meghan Markle is rumored to have hired one of these bot farms.
I'm
and
sure
over
she
like
has.
And in order to create the dissenting opinions that go against Catherine, that go against the royal family, that are like pro Meg, it's celebrities also use and hire things like that, like different bot farms, in order to try to sway opinion in their way. I'm sure, somebody like a J-Lo would really love to have a bot farm on her side right now, because she's going through it right now. If you spent any time on TikTok, for sure. I know
Yeah.
you haven't, but
Are you talking about her New York stances?
the
Wrong
Bronx is done with
Street.
her. The
Yeah,
Bronx,
we
the
are
blog.
done. No, I'm on the side. I'm actually done with it too.
I've been on this side, and you know how good it feels to finally see the day of reckoning for that woman. Like I saw
another episode of Grace and Blythe just shitting on women. Women stand for women, and except for if you're
no,
Meghan
you gotta.
Markle or
I don't care if
J-Lo.
you're a man or a woman. Like you're gonna get
Yes.
called out on this bullshit. And a video I saw. I've never liked J-Lo just because what she did to Ashanti, what she did to Christina Milian. I've always thought, bad vibes, bad juju coming from her. And then you see all this news starts coming out. She got a little, obviously she's in the court documents with P. Diddy. And so
Yes.
that's a whole other side of the drama. But then she bombs with this movie. that she won the greatest love story never told or whatever. And then I see a video of like her, all of these people now are coming out and, that's neither here nor there. But she spit her gum out in her assistant's hand. That was one thing that I did want to mention. That was like, she's that kind of person. Like, she's not going to take her gum and put it in the trash herself. She's going to spit her gum in her assistant's hand and make her assistant throw it away. This is what this type of woman is. Anyways,
I do want to try her. I will say, I like really do want to try her sangria or whatever she's got going on, because it looks.
She doesn't even drink alcohol. How does she know it's good?
What?
She's a fraud.
Oh my God, I didn't even know. No, it really, I was just watching one last night where it was like her interview where she's like, what's your go-to like Bronx food? And she's like, well, bacon, ham, and ham and
orange
cheese,
soda,
and then an orange drink. If you know, you know. And then it was like,
girl,
a bunch of
nobody
Bronx
knows.
people was like, what's an orange drink? And they're like, I don't know. And clearly it's a bacon, egg, and cheese. A ham and cheese, not even egg on there.
Psychopath.
It's just a grilled cheesy psychopath. Yeah.
Anyways,
ham and cheese.
That was a roundabout
bacon
way.
Looking.
Anyways, teach your friends, teach your family.
They're like, oh wow, look at these two just going after. We should have like there's like a podcast I listen to. They make like little like sound bite things, and we should have a sound bite where it's like, here they go again, shitting on women. Like,
we hold women accountable on this show.
Yes, exactly. We're holding women accountable, okay?
All that to say, hold your family accountable too. Hold your friends accountable as well. Yeah. And if they start sharing conspiracy theory nonsense, like help them understand.
I do want to say though, on the whole family thing, it's not really like an opposite view, but what's interesting is there was, I think even like Craig retweeted someone saying this as well. It showcases to you how when situations like this happen, how many people don't really understand infrastructure or even like waterways. It's like I was having dinner with my parents actually, like I think a day or two after this happened, and my mom was like, "Why do they have to shut down the whole port? Like, just go a different route in there." And I'm like, "There is no other route in there." Like, and she's like, "Well, like the bridge is gone." It's like, "Well, they have to rebuild the bridge." So it's like, or these container ships are like huge. Like, you can't just rebuild a bridge and also continue letting traffic through. And that's where it's like, I really, as a logistics person, right? Like, that drivers hate going into Florida because there's only one way in and one way out, or you these like weird areas in the United States that are like difficult to get into, like these like little details that people don't really right, like drivers can't really park in New York City, so that's why they don't like going to New York to begin with. So
certain roads in Colorado they can't drive through because they're too steep and things like that.
Yeah, like people don't get those things, and so that's where it's like, for me, I think that also the American population got educated on like I said, the infrastructure problems that we might have, that if this goes down, like there is no other pathway in there. So we're about to have East Coast longshoremen contracts up this I think by May they technically have to start really talking about it, and then I think September or October is where like strikes will happen if it's not done. But like, how do you have a contract discussion with a group of longshoremen who can't work at that port? Oh, snort right there. Welcome to my life.
Well,
but you know what I mean? It's like, so it's kind of interesting. Like I was explaining to my mom, like I'm worried about the employees, like those people's jobs. Where are they gonna? And then now you have to consider, like, you can't just say, well, go get a new job, because are they going to need to like go over the bridge? Like, what's their commute to like this new job that you feel like they should go get? And I just think it's interesting. Not even of course the like conspiracy theory aspect of it, but just like educating
like a practical level. Like, okay, where else should they drive to? Like, if you were in this situation, where else would you go? How else would you try to get to work if you worked at the port? So I think it's trying to help people understand the thought process that goes into, because it's what did I hear the other day? Like, it's easy to have ideas because you're never punished for bad ideas.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what happens a lot on social media is that, we spout off ideas and it all seems fine and easy to implement
Yeah.
until you're actually in it. And it's like, okay, what would you do?
Yeah.
How would you handle this situation? And it's a situation that requires a lot of experts, requires a lot of nuance.
Mhm.
Um, and in situations like that, I think people are just used to like the local news giving their angle of it, and they spend 30 seconds or maybe a few minutes talking about a very complex issue where they really only have the time to be very surface level, and they
Yeah.
probably don't have the time to go and talk to experts because even local news, local reporters are not paid a whole lot, and they're responsible for doing their entire job. So a lot of this news just is expected to be disseminated by the public, and a lot of the public have no idea how
They're stupid.
algorithms work, have no idea how fast news spreads. My
Yeah.
brother the other day said something to we were talking about content moderation, and he was like, why don't they just get rid of all the hateful people on Twitter? And I was like, okay, do you have any idea how content moderation works? Like, how would
Yeah.
you get rid of all of the hateful people on Twitter? From a systematic point, if you were to tell someone to do it, how would you do it? And I think that just a lot of people don't understand the complexities
In a
of modern
society that
media.
has free speech, like, on
Yeah.
top of it, right? Like,
It's
I
one
always
thing.
love when, like, a democratic problem solution is socialism. I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?"
It's like you realize like whatever law that you implement now, like
Yeah.
the next guy, which probably might be Trump, is gonna have
Yeah.
access to that same law. I hope you care about it now just as much as you will if he does it.
It's
So
like
it's
it's like when people are, and I'm the same way, I'll say this, is when people are like, what do you call it? What's, Putin? Like, oh god, what's not socialism, but,
communism.
yeah, communism, like, it works in theory. It's like, yeah. Yeah, like, if Jesus was, like, the leader, or, like, someone who can't sin, or, like, it's like, if this perfect person that doesn't exist, like,
I know it's very
was
it,
was that
it,
person.
it's very much like I would love to sit around and make art all day. But somebody still has to drive the trucks, somebody still has
Yeah,
to dig the ditches,
yeah,
and somebody still has to slaughter the animals, like, it's a
yeah,
lot of things that need to be done and that you are forced to do
yeah,
under communism.
yeah,
So you don't really
exactly.
have a choice.
Yeah.
Still needs to get
What
done.
if we just forced everyone to do that? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, sure.
Interesting approach.
It's
So,
so funny.
just to sort of round this one out, we're going to be faced with a lot of this over the next year in coming years because
Yeah,
of just the influx of AI, how you're able to manipulate content. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't believe anything that you see immediately. If something makes you angry, that's probably by design.
yeah, true.
Get in the habit of checking yourself and making yourself snap out of it when you find yourself in these news cycles and it's making you really upset. Also, if you hear just like a crazy quote, just take an extra step and go and see what was asked or what was said before the quote that you heard and
Yeah,
after the quote you heard. There's probably where you're going to find the nuance in there.
exactly.
And then one last tip I'll give is to make sure that if you struggle with, the I think it's just the mindset of people think that they're smarter than a supercomputer. You have a supercomputer in your pocket in the palm of your hand, powered by a super powered algorithm on various social media feeds. You are not smarter than those things. You will
Yeah,
never be smarter than those things. So recognize that. Try to put time limits on yourself. Opal, the app, helps me a lot. It blocks all of like the distracting apps from my phone from like 9 to 5:30 so I can actually get some work done. And then it
nice.
also turns back on again at 10:30 at night. And it doesn't allow me to check social media. I could, end the app
Oh,
and go and check it if it's like an emergency. But that has really helped sort of the mindless scrolling because you never realize how often you pick up your phone and go to an app and you have no reason why you're doing it. It's just out of habit.
yeah,
So that's one big recommendation I would give is to install that app and use it.
yeah. That's awesome. Good for you. That's my prime time.
Well, I
10:30.
get those screen
10:30.
reports.
That's when my stories start going.
Which I will. What happens in the Opal app if you want to? They call it sessions, and so you have a daytime session and a nighttime session. And the daytime session, if you want to end it or snooze it for like 15 minutes, so you can go and check something, you have to wait 30 seconds, and it gets
Ooh,
increasingly longer the more you try to do it throughout the
that's
day.
cool.
So at first it's 30 seconds, and then if you try to check it again, it's like 45 seconds, and then it just keeps increasing until that time limit is up. And it just forces you to think about, why am I going to check this app right
Yeah,
now? Is there an intent behind it, or is it just like the mindless scrolling? But
for sure.
versus the nighttime, it'll let me leave after like 10 seconds. So I think it
Nice.
kind of knows, like, when to, and you can adjust all of those settings as well. Like you can choose which apps to block and which ones not to. So I don't include like LinkedIn in that, because I'm not going to get sucked into LinkedIn for too long.
Yeah,
Like TikTok and
exactly.
Twitter, I will get sucked in for a while. For too long.
See, that's why you gotta not even have it on your phone. I'm just saying.
You don't have it
Actually,
on?
no, not TikTok.
Oh,
Yeah.
girl. Yeah, but you got all the
It's
other
I
ones.
will say though, I had a conversation with my niece who's just turning 12 here in a couple weeks, and she like was flabbergasted I didn't have TikTok, and but the same thing, it's like she's like they just like get addicted to it. It's like nonstop. My sister's kind of that way too. It's like kind of frightening to watch. So
Yeah,
she's like, Grace, did you hear that they're gonna cancel TikTok? And I was like, if only in my perfect world, you know.
I do have to kind of throw it out there that no, that we'll save a TikTok for a TikTok debate for another show, because there's definitely a lot of speaking of like the political maneuvering and things like that.
Yeah.
Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg are absolutely behind this movement, because they've been
Oh,
selling us off to
Zuck
the highest bidder, or maybe even the lowest bidder, for a decade.
I
He
love
had
it.
some email.
Zuckerberg,
Only
I think I
American
said that.
companies can sell us. Nobody else.
Yeah, I think I said that like this Easter weekend when we were talking about it, like TikTok and everything. I said Zuckerberg is the only person that can have my data. He's the only guy I trust. I mean, didn't you see the movie? Justin Timberlake, he knew Justin Timberlake
Listen, we
wasn't a
don't
good
mention he's
person.
canceled. We don't
Yeah,
mention
well, that's
Justin
what I
Timberlake
mean.
on this show. Everything
Zuckerberg
is
knew from the moment he met him that he wasn't a good guy, right?
Oh, we should probably talk about Britney on a future show, because
Well, that could get turned into a debate because there's some mental health issues there. I think
it's a lot, and it's at the hands of the people closest to her. I don't know if you had a chance to listen
Yeah,
to her
by the
audiobook.
way, quick, if anyone hasn't seen Quiet on Set yet, wait for your Nickelodeon
Oh,
dreams to be just destroyed. And I actually want to personally apologize for being a part of the anti-Drake or like remember when he became like a bad boy?
yeah.
I was on that team of like, what a bad boy. We don't like Drake anymore. And now I feel awful about it and I take it all back. So I was like watching it like, who was I?
Who's
This poor kid.
Amanda Bynes too? Like, I
Man,
just thought, oh my God, this girl is absolutely insane. I kind of just thought it was like, oh, the childhood stardom, that's the root of this issue. And it's like, no, they're actually like pedophiles that were working on set and
yeah.
putting her in the worst position, and nobody was looking out for her. Not speaking of Britney, like nobody was looking out for Amanda, like
Yeah.
no, not her parents, not her family, no one. So that's just it's
Yeah.
a awful situation, but it is interesting to
What a
watch.
turn of events for us to be talking about.
We need like a pop culture episode, because there's a lot going on in just the world of like traditional celebrity, and how that's just kind of crumbling, and
I
it's
was
very
watching that like jaw open the whole time. Like,
well, P Diddy, J Lo, you have there's a lot
oh
of different
boy.
factors like at play of like these big time celebrities that you see around, and the stuff they got in their closets. So it's I don't know if I want to know anymore, but a part of me is like, we probably should know a little bit more.
Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. Tide TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With Tide, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. Tide equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battle stations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo.
But I guess, speaking of closets, let's talk about the changing retail landscape.
Yes. Perfect transition. That's so good.
We did it, yay!
Yes, yes. Speaking of closets.
Okay, next story. We've got a hell of a post by Britton Ladd. Do you follow him on LinkedIn?
Yes, yes.
He is.
I didn't realize he posted about this though.
Well, this is so I wanted to start with I want to start it from the lens of the changing retail landscape.
Oh,
because
cool. Okay,
we have obviously the things about Shein that we're going to get to in just a hot second. There's another one with Amazon Go halting the just walk out concept. You know, that concept where like you scan your phone before you walk into the store, you put everything in your basket, and then you can just walk out. You don't have to talk to a cashier. You can be as antisocial as your little heart desires. But they are canceling all of that, and they canceled it very abruptly. And Britton Ladd had his kind of I don't want to say a scathing post, but a very like, he's getting a little spicy on here, talking about the reasons why Amazon is halting this program. And he called it, what did he say? Gimmicks disguised as innovation. Because essentially it wasn't the technology that was being promised was that, it's AI scanning your cart and it's scanning your basket. And that is, that's how they're coming up with your bill. No, it's just like 1,000 contractors in India watching you on video and then choosing, which items you bought and then eventually charging you for it. So that to me just kind of blew my mind that it doesn't, I guess it shouldn't like blow your mind that Amazon would do some shady things. But he had a really good post about it. I'll have it in the show notes. What else did he say? He said, well, that was just the thing that just stood out to me the most. Gimmicks disguised as innovation. So we had that post by Britton Ladd. Again, I'll link to it in the show notes, but basically that kind of technology isn't really where it's at. According to his post, he says that really it's about T-Mobile has partnered with a company called 345 Global, and they're actually developing this kind of technology where it's the dash carts, the just walk out philosophy, but actually real technology that is doing this. It's not all the way there yet from what he says, but it is coming soon. I guess we'll see. It was a lot of like fake promises by Amazon, but I think that concept as a whole is just not going to be pursued by them. Then next, as far as like changing retail landscape, we have your story in the stock out of Shein going direct to consumer, which is a very interesting play because we have, what's going on with retail companies, but also what's going on with online companies as well. Just retail as a whole, I think is just fascinating area to watch right now, especially after COVID, the dramatic rise in e-commerce shopping. So all of that setting the stage. Grace, tell us what's going on with Shein direct to consumer.
Yeah, so Shein is an interesting company. We'll get into the kind of ethics behind it here in a second, but it came out during, there's talks of them going IPO, which honestly me and Mike were talking about on the stock out would be kind of cool because if you are a public company, there's reporting you have to do. So actually more transparency into those ethical moments and into your operations. So I kind of am hoping that they go public because I think we'll learn more about the company that way as well. So that being said, they came out that they're going to start offering basically allowing other companies to use their supply chain infrastructure. So kind of like supply chain as a service situation. And what people could do, it kind of reminds me, I'm going to make a really weird comparison, but it kind of reminds me of American Eagle purchasing Quiet Logistics, right? It's like, well, instead of us like paying Quiet, why don't we own Quiet and we can get a better capture of how our supply chain works, but also how others work. And of course, with that, right, you're going to be able to kind of take advantage of pricing and I'd say volume and things like that a little bit more too. Another great example of it is Home Depot, right? Home Depot actually, for the flatbed freight that they move, they offer flatbed carriers loads as well. So they're like making money off of their own supply chain in a way that is kind of how to look at it. I think it's really smart for those who do have a really great supply chain. So Shein's offering that and is going to be offering that to other retailers, e-commerce platforms, mostly I think retail, clothing, etc. So that, for instance, if you and it's funny, you and I wanted to create a t-shirt, right, or something along those lines, we could technically have Shein and one of their third-party manufacturers make that for us, come up with the designs, use their Shein's infrastructure to ship that out, and of course sell it on the platform, etc. Which is smart, but again, you have to think about what you're becoming a part of at the same time. I mean, but it is incredible. They have over 5,400 different third-party manufacturers in China today. They have over $30 billion in revenue. Now, I have heard that that's starting to fall off a little bit, which I think is why the IPO is kind of taking, outside of the questions of their ethics, it's taking some time. But it's interesting. We go in the article and in our newsletter too, we dive into kind of the concerns, questions you might want to ask, right? Like, which talks about them sometimes stealing intellectual property. So if I am giving them designs or I am using them, are they also have the ability to steal those designs from me and see those coming? But they do have an incredible supply chain, and it's because of this small batch model that they use compared to others. And it's hard to explain. So I did find a really great video by Wall Street Journal that dives into exactly why they are growing the way that they are growing, the way to sustain fast fashion. I think that's really the question we're asking today is retailers are realizing fast fashion is a thing. It's a trend. So how do we actually build a supply chain around a trend that is so reactive, right? Like you have to be able to spot a hot fashion trend, be able to manufacture that instantly, but also like how do you have the inventory for that? Like how do you actually watch, engage, like what's popular and what's not? So I don't know if you have that video up, but we can do. Perfect. Let's show that first segment where they go into the small batch model, because I think it's pretty interesting, especially for fast fashion in general.
Scrolling through Shein's website can feel endless.
We offer thousands of new items per day.
But Shein only initially produces 100 to 200 units of each new product.
Shein's designs originate with Shein designers and with our Shein X third-party designers.
As customers browse those designs, Shein has technology that monitors users' engagement activity. When a customer shows interest in an item by hovering over it, clicking on it, or adding it to their cart, Shein takes note. Then it creates new designs based on data from popular items. This way, the retailer can test how popular an item is with its customers. If it does well, Shein starts producing more.
This differs from traditional retail, where orders can often be placed in the 10,000 to 100,000 copies of a garment and can be placed between 3 and 6 months in advance.
And while it's fast at creating new designs, it's also quick to go through them. A Boston Consulting Group report found that Shein has an inventory turnover rate of 40 days. That same report found that Shein is twice as fast as other competitor retailers like H&M and Zara.
The small batch model is a matter of controlling the cost and controlling the inventory wastage so that they won't have a large number of clothes that are sitting unsold in their warehouses in China or in the US or anywhere else in the world.
The company calls this an on-demand model.
And so that right there, that's what you would be potentially investing into if you were to take this new solution from Shein as well, which it's impossible to watch that and to understand retail and say, oh, I'm not interested in it. I mean, H&M and the people they just listed off, I'm sure are questioning whether or not this is something they want to be a part of, because it is a way to save costs and to push back a little bit, possibly waste as well, depending on your customers.
And that's, so I guess sort of the dilemma of fast fashion, or that it's been talked about, is that it's such a wasteful thing. And if I'm understanding this move correctly, this hopes to reduce that being a wasteful thing where, say, like a Forever 21, for example, which has retail locations, they did have massive retail locations all over the country. I think that they've downsized quite a bit, and maybe don't have the longevity to survive, for the next decade, like they have the past decade. And so there's a lot of waste in that regard because they have to order all of the inventory and then hope that it ships and hopes that, somebody is going to buy it. Whereas this model, you're only shipping it, you're printing it or making it in smaller quantities and
Yeah.
really only printing it if the demand is shown online that it's there, right?
Yeah, almost the waste aspect of it comes from almost more of us as the consumer, the aspect that it actually this model exists, because it's pushing the consumer to say, okay, maybe I can't, and because it's so cheap as well, which we'll get into why it's so cheap in a second, but because it's so cheap, I feel like I can, instead of spending maybe $50 on a really good garment piece at Macy's, I'll buy 10 items for $5 on Shein, knowing that like it's gonna get destroyed after a little bit, right? Like you go into as a consumer understanding it's cheap for a reason. But of course it's polyester, and a lot of these things are bad for the environment that you're using too. So it's almost like it's like when people ask like how do we fix like the driver rates. It's like, I don't know, like start spending more money on stuff that they can move around. Like it's us almost. It's the problem.
Yeah.
It's the consumerism of it all, right? That this even exists, that we can purchase these things as fast as we do, and be wasteful in our own mindset as well. So it's like, I think it's not as much as they're being wasteful as much as it's allowing us to be wasteful as
Yeah.
consumers.
And I mean, if the business exists, the business would not exist if demand was not there. And so I think
Exactly.
it's educating the public, but also it feels like something new is like coming into my life every day, or some
Yeah.
kind of news that comes into my life every day that makes me question every decision that I make. And I feel
Yeah.
like everything's trying to kill me. And at some
Yep.
point, even like I saw a video relative to this the other day, that because our clothes, especially like workout clothes, are made from so much polyester,
Yeah.
that workout clothes in particular, because they're so tight on your body and they're in like, certain areas where you are sweating, and
Yeah.
that stuff has nowhere to go. So it's just mixing with the plastic in the
Yeah.
polyester material and then just seeping into your skin. And it's like, great.
Yeah.
Another way for me to die. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And you could probably buy maybe better workout clothes that maybe push again. I don't polyester because perfect for that, but
yeah.
you could try a different type of cotton or a different
I mean,
fabric,
what are you
but
gonna do? Like work out in wool? Like that's not
yeah.
gonna happen.
Or
Like
like you could do maybe cotton, but also you have to understand with cotton, right? Is like you're not gonna be able to purchase it and have it delivered, and the styles might not change as quickly as you see on Shein. And I think there's there's definitely other brands that I think are like this too, and that use Shein, or at least some type of model like it, and that's why I think they're of course selling it, because it makes sense. It works. They've proven it works. And why not offer it to competitors and make some money off of it?
So, how do you think that this compares to like the Timu model? Like, do you think that they're using a lot of the same manufacturers? Like, and we can just essentially, instead of going through Amazon and paying an upcharge for Amazon and getting 2-day shipping, I have found that I've become very comfortable with, if I need certain items, I'm just going to go to Timu because I'm going to get the same exact product that Amazon sells for much cheaper, and I'll just get it a week later.
Yeah.
And if it sucks, it's fine because I'll just, I'm to your point, I'm contributing to this type of like fast fashion or just
Yeah.
cheap products and not getting quality. So I think it's probably about finding like the balance, maybe like, some things I don't necessarily need to buy the highest end model that's going to last, 60 years. Sometimes I just want like, I just bought like one of those empanada cutters where like you put the dough in it and you put the, your stuff inside, and all
Sure
you
you
have to
did.
do is just close the case and your empanada is done. You don't have to, not that empanadas take a long time to make or anything, but I bought that off Temu and I was like, wow, this is definitely like a moment of self-reflection.
Well, and
Like,
it's
did I
I'm
really need
sure,
this?
but I'm sure you probably could have bought something like it on other sites where it's produced maybe in Mexico or in other locations, but it might take a little bit longer to ship. It's definitely going to take more to make the product. I think what's interesting about all of this is like it kind of goes back to a little bit of what we were discussing earlier. Is like the arrogance of the American consumer, right? To say let's rely less on China, but also see companies like Temu and Shein just explode. Like the reason they're exploding, and you were at this chat. God, I need to do an interview with her as well. The wonderful woman that from the Customs Border Protection, right?
Yep.
She was talking about a situation like this. So, for instance, we talked about they have 5,400 third-party manufacturers. I'm going to assume most of those are in Asia of some sort. I would love to visit all of those 5,500 and see how many are ethically working the same labor laws that we expect here in the United States. None of them are. Let's just be honest, they aren't. But we'll still buy it, so it's like, again, it's
kind of choosing where you want to turn a blind eye to.
Exactly.
Where we make those choices each day. I'm not, telling you what to do or, what not to do, but this company is existing and they're making lots and lots of money. But they're existing for a reason because the demand is there. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing as well as they are. But there are some sort of moral and ethical questions around it. I'm going to share this tweet that comes from Kyla Scanton, and
love her.
Scanlon. Is that how you say it? Scanlon? That looks like how you say her last name.
Yeah.
But she says on Shein, their clothes are 65% polyester. That's double what Zara and H&M have. Laundering polyester is responsible for about 35% of the microplastics in the ocean. Shein ships between 2 to 3 billion items a year. Their emissions grew by 52% last year. They 10x their lobbying spend in the last year. 13,000 influencers are posting hauls. 1.3 million products a year. Zara releases around 35,000. $0 in tariffs on 30 billion in revenue. We should, I don't know why that sticks out to me the most. That feels like a lot of revenue. We have a lot of money issues in this country. I found a solution right there.
Well, we should probably, if you want to show the clip of the tax loophole, I think that's interesting too, is people don't understand how they're shipped. And again, this would be great for, I think, a lot of companies who want to use their supply chain, like how much money they are avoiding and paying in tariffs or in taxes because of how they're shipping to us at the end of the day. And it's funny because it goes back to a lot of these, right, do take a little bit longer to ship, right? Like most people aren't going to look at Shein or a Temu to deliver in 1 or 2 days. But this is why you're not going to see that, because there's a cost to that, right? It goes back to how cheap it is.
So the same video, right?
Yep, same video. I think it's closer to the 6-minute mark.
Oh, 6-minute mark.
Yep, a little bit closer to the end of it. And yeah, it'll kind of explain that the interesting loophole that they got going on. That
let me see.
Uyghur labor, which Beijing denies.
Some U.S. lawmakers have pushed Shein to be more transparent about their supply chain.
This is, of course,
in a statement to WSJ, the company says it has zero tolerance for forced labor, does not have contract manufacturers in Xinjiang, and doesn't source cotton from China. Fashion analysts say Shein hasn't provided evidence to back up these statements, including a list of its suppliers, which goes against industry standards.
It doesn't, because it's not public.
In addition to its on-demand model and low labor costs, Shein also keeps prices low by taking advantage of a U.S. tax exemption, which allows low-valued packages to enter the U.S. tariff-free. Under the de minimis tax rule, shipments sent to individual buyers in the U.S. aren't subject to tariffs if they're worth less than $800. According to a report from the U.S. House of Representatives, 30% of all packages shipped to the United States each day under the de minimis rule are from Shein and its rival Temu. Between the two companies, that adds up to millions of packages. Shein says that it supports reforming the de minimis exemption. Meanwhile, the valuation has fallen. The company's
Dang. Did you want me to play more of
Nope.
that clip, or
That's yep. Just so people kind of understand, because I don't think people get, like, there's a reason why they don't have a lot of times. What happens is the fulfillment centers will be here in the United States. So a lot of your favorite brands might produce clothing in Vietnam, and then it comes over here as like 40 t-shirts or whatever at a time, and they they pay taxes on those appropriately, and then from the fulfillment centers, it goes directly to consumers. Whereas in Shein and Temu, they're shipping it directly to the consumer from China. And because it's at $4 or whatever you paid for, right? That's what allows them to skip over those taxes. So, again, if that's something you're dealing with, struggling to figure out how to deliver that service to your customers, and not have a fulfillment center here in the United States, well, this is, again, that service might be something you're possibly considering.
And
So.
I would say too, another, I guess, interesting side note or sidebar about this, that you're not on TikTok, so you haven't seen this. But a bunch of different retailers, higher end retailers, are getting called out because they're buying products from Shein and then increasing the price and
Yeah.
forgetting to take the Shein tags off of their merch. This one woman's video went viral because I think the shop was Jaded London, and she had spent $80 on this outfit. And she's like, it was a birthday outfit. I got so many compliments. And she goes to take it off and put it in the wash. But she looked at the side tag. It wasn't even the tag in the back of like the shirt that you're wearing. It was like the side tag. They had forgotten to take that Shein tag off. And so she goes to Shein's site and looks it up, and it's like an $8 outfit where she's paying $80 for this same getup. And it's a lot of there's actually another local retailer that started out like 5, maybe 10 years ago. They had a lot of like local influencer buzz, and they got caught doing the same thing. And this is a store that became successful and then started franchising out into different cities in the South. And now they're getting raked through the coals for doing exactly the same thing. And so I think people are waking up to the fact that a lot of local boutiques are purchasing items from Shein and just upping the price. But now you have a situation where you can just buy direct. You can skip the middleman of Amazon. There's obviously a lot of ethical questions in that regard, but Shein, Temu, there's a lot of the same products, a lot of the same photos that you see on Amazon or on these other sites, and they're charging you more on Amazon versus these other sites. So I don't know what like the right or wrong answer is. We have covered, Shein before, back when like Shein like flew in all those influencers to their factory in China, and then told them that they couldn't really talk about, any of the legal issues around like using slave labor and things like that. Obviously the Uyghurs, playing a role in this, or not really playing a role, being forced to play a role in this. So we went through a couple notes, and I guess, sort of round out this story. Tips from that episode, we talked about the average person buys a new piece of clothing every 5 days, which is kind of insane. So we're buying more and destroying more than we ever have in human history. Another takeaway was fibers like cotton and wool have the longest shelf life. Polyester does not. A company like Sheep Inc. will send you a button with your wool clothing owner. So what was that? The sheep farm.
So cute.
You could pick a sheep and find out where your wool material was made from. So they'll like make you a coat out of the wool that comes from a sheep that you pick. So obviously stuff like that is going to cost you more, but it's going to last longer, and it's better for the environment. So I guess if your conscience is affecting you by buying something off Shein, then I guess go sponsor a sheep. It'll make you feel a little bit better. And then what I do love to see is it's happening more and more. I don't know how often like people actually go and verify that these are accurate, but I think it goes a long way if you mention your supply chain on your website. So being able to list where you got those goods and where you purchased them, I think is going to become increasingly important if you bundle this all sort of with the, I guess, the ethics of the discussion that we're talking about. And then there is a website called goodonyou.eco that you can find out if that company that you're buying your clothes from is actually, you know, a good representative for like, you know, sustainability and things like that, which is important to a lot of people. So if you want to be a more eco-conscious shopper, obviously you're probably not going to have, you know, a Shein or a Temu app on your phone, but if you want to take the, you know, the, I guess, more sustainability route, you can go to that website, goodonyou.eco. No, it's just goodonyou.eco, no .com or anything like that.
Love it.
Are you an eco-conscious shopper?
No. I will say I definitely use Amazon more and more frequently. I've avoided Shein so far. There have been times where I've like put stuff in my cart and I'm just like, oh no, I'm good. I don't need this stuff. But if anything, I've been pretty happy with Amazon a little bit more recently on their fashion, especially for plus size. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, I think being a plus size girl, you want to try clothes on, and anything that's coming from honestly China, I'm gonna just assume it's gonna just be too small to begin with. So
the Asian sizes, and then also that's one of the things that the way I justify it when I buy something from Temu, it's like, well, if it's crap, then it's not gonna, you know, I paid $2 for it, so I don't, you know, really care, and I'll just probably just donate it or, you know, toss it in the garbage, which is another aspect of just, you know, I guess things that you want to be a little bit more conscious about. I did hear this story recently where this woman was doing like a detox for God, what is the Christian holiday? Lent or Catholic holiday, Lent. So she gave up social media, and she found that when she gave up social media, her e-commerce shopping went down dramatically. And I thought that was really interesting because I just kind of forget how often I'm, you know, scrolling on social media and I see an ad and I'm like, oh, that looks great. Let me click on it, add to cart. And then I just go back to doing what I'm doing. And then, you know, later on, I will just hit order on all of that. But social media also has a dramatic effect on all of this as well.
See, if you want to get into my shopping habits, like I'm more of like spend money on like bullshit like this, you know, like things where I'm like, I've gotta have this. Yeah, this like this too. I got this one too with it. It's a little shark. No,
I mean, it is very fitting. It's very on brand.
It is very on brand. I just buy bullshit. That's my problem. It's not even clothes. Because, you know, honestly, like, I get too much free shit through, like, work and conferences. I'm like, I don't need any more clothes. No, I just like to spend it on complete nonsense. So, like, anything, all the stuff you see back here, like, yeah, all just bullshit, you know.
It's just about balance. You know,
I mean, look, it's so cute.
There's have you ever heard of the concept of like cute culture in like Japan? So you lived in Japan for a couple years, you know Japanese, like, so the cute culture, for folks who don't know, I haven't been to Japan. I only discovered this in the Japan Pavilion at Epcot. They have a whole little exhibit there that talks about after the two nuclear bombs were dropped. Obviously, there was a long period of, just trying to mentally recover, obviously, structurally, infrastructure recover. But the way that a lot of the Japanese, that's where the cute culture sort of originated from, is because they were looking for little moments in their life to be happy. And so that's, that's where like a lot of like Sanrio was sort of born out of. And like soap dishes, are different characters, really cute, dish towels, not like all of those little items throughout your house, trying to make those little moments cuter in order to make you feel better. So I think that's also an interesting thing at play as well. Just I guess a sort of footnote on that as we enter
Hawaii.
Kawaii.
That's how you say cute in Japanese.
Oh, nice little Japanese lesson. My brother is going to Japan in a couple weeks. His first trip out of the country. So I'm super pumped for him. He's also going to Disney Sea the Disney park over there, and I'm like, you have
Jealous.
to bring me back some stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
Kauai. We're gonna try Kauai stuff.
Kauai.
All
Okay,
the
yeah.
things is, yeah.
All right, next one. Favorite freight biz side hustle. This is becoming one of my more favorite segments that we do on the show. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I got a weird one. It's technically it's it's a it's a freight history lesson slash hustle in regards to marketing, I think, in this industry. So we've done a couple of these before, like talked about some of these issues in the past. And what I want to bring up today is one of the biggest losses of American supply chains of all time, and that's good old Hershey. So
Oh, I
back
love that
in
you got this because
yes,
oh,
yeah, well, so we'll go through the video here in a second, but to give a little bit of history, basically back in 1996, Hershey decided our systems are crap. We need to update them. Of course, online shopping was becoming a thing a little bit more, right? Like Bezos had just started coming out, all that jazz. So in 1996, they said we need a new ERP. That's Enterprise Resource Planning System. If you don't know what that is, a TMS and a CRM. And so going into it, they wanted a 30-month turnaround in particular. And it actually, with that 30-month turnaround, was going to come out in about 1999 right before like the Halloween Christmas season. And so, long story short, they planned it terribly. Even the people that they worked with in order to build these new systems and integrate these new systems into their supply chain told them, like, you're going to need at least 48 months. And they're like, no, Hershey's, figure it out. We need this now. So, long story short, Halloween time to implement this and integrate this into their systems came around. It just collapsed within itself. None of it was working appropriately. And they ended up losing about $100 million in orders because of system integration problems. Which led to about 8% drop in their stock and over 19% drop in their quarterly earnings from that Q3 in particular. And affecting mostly the Hershey Kisses orders and Jolly Ranchers as well. And I think it's interesting because we talk about technology these days, right? And a lot of the issues that go along with it. And I want to applaud a certain company. If you go to, so I'll bring up this video, this will kind of not only we talked about, right, like fun ways to make content in this industry. And there's a lot of you out there that are consultants. And I don't know why we don't see more of these type of videos, but not only are they
have you?
yeah,
go ahead. I was going to say, have you ever talked with this guy from Third Stage Consulting?
No, I found this online.
Really, that's interesting. I've been on his show twice
No
to talk about
way!
to talk about supply chain, like just global
Wow,
issues,
dude.
things like that. Yeah.
Bye, mean. So he's going to go over, of course, what happened, but then he's going to teach you about how to avoid this problem happening today. So
Okay.
yeah, go ahead and run it. It's smart marketing.
Hershey's tried to implement SAP. They spent quite a bit of money on their implementation. And what they found at the time of their go live is that they were incapable of processing roughly $100 million of orders for Hershey's Kisses and Jolly Ranchers. So some of the problems that Hershey's ran into is that they tried to implement the product, the SAP product, in an unreasonably short period of time. And in fact, just from the outside looking in, it looks and sounds like it was never going to happen. And those unrealistic expectations caused the first domino to fall, which led to a lot of other problems later on throughout the implementation. And finally, one of the biggest mistakes, if not the biggest mistakes that Hershey's made along with their implementation partners, is that they decided to go live during a busy holiday season when chocolate is most readily bought by customers. And so this was a case where the implementation planning wasn't very well thought out, or if it was thought out, the risks were not well mitigated. And it's just a good reminder that we need to think long and hard about when we go live, how it affects our day-to-day business as a way to ensure that we don't run into operational disruptions. So what gives? Why did these projects fail? And more importantly, what can we do to avoid this type of disaster? Or more likely, how can we avoid a more moderate failure that we're not going to read about in the news, but still becomes painful for our organization? How can we navigate those pitfalls? What is it we can do to avoid this type of failure? Well, first is to choose the right software. Make sure you've got the right technology supporting your business and that you're not choosing software and implementing software in a biased way. The second thing is to choose the right system integrator. Make sure you have the right partner or partners helping you implement. Just because it's a big name or a well-known name system integrator doesn't mean that you're immune to failure or that you won't get fired or that your project won't fail. Another thing to do is to remember that you are in charge of your project. This is your project. It's not the software vendors. It's not your system integrators. And you need to do what you need to do to make this project successful. If your system integrator isn't working out, course correct. Either give them clear direction on what you expect from them or fire them if you need to, bring in additional help, whatever it is you need. And also make sure that you're the one mitigating risks and identifying risks. System integrators generally aren't very good at mitigating risks and identifying where the risks are.
I think that Eric. That's Eric Kimberling, I think it's his last name, but Third Stage Consulting Group. But he has a pretty big presence on a lot of different social media channels. But he talks about, sort of the boring parts of business, but how much those boring parts, like change management and ERP, really has a dramatic effect on your bottom line and just like employee morale.
Well, I think so many times you hear just things failing in the tech side of things, but for me, that's the first question I can ask is these questions. Well, did you just go into it being like, we have this problem that this tech company said they can solve and they didn't solve it? It's like, no, you have to be a part of that conversation. You have to be part of that planning. You can't just be like, fix it for us and not be reasonable and have a smart discussion with both sides contributing. So that's a little freight lesson for you. On top of that, for all consultancy agencies out there, do more content like this guy. Like, I was watching this, and I was like, yes, let's go, sir. Like, and small world, right? It sounds like you already knew about him. So
shout out to Eric.
Shout out to Eric. Way to go. You're leading the cause, and I love that.
Awesome. Well, moving on into mine, because I know that I say this each show. I was like, we only have a few more minutes left, but we still have so much to talk about. So I'm going to show mine because back in my executive assistant days, I was tasked with, we were an asset-based 3PL. And so they were constantly trying to find, typical like one person marketing team. You tell them to like figure out everything. So one day I was tasked from one of the executives to figure out a monetization plan for the side of our trucks to sell ad space on these trucks in order to generate, additional revenue stream for the company. So I met with like a marketing agency that was going to be able to handle the, the graphic design for the ads and the campaign management. I went and found like a local, like truck wrap detailer that will be able to actually like put the decals and put it's essentially like a giant sticker that you're putting on the side of the truck. So I was tasked with the research of that project. Well, long story short, we ran out of money. So we didn't really think it all the way through of like, who's actually going to pay for these advertisements? Where are we going to get these advertisers? Like, are we going to have any kind of rules on, what they're allowed to advertise and what they're not? So that was a fatal flaw in the plan. Can't blame me. I was like 27 at the time and I had no other person to like rely on. But basically the executive team was like, okay, we can't do this program anymore. We got to squash it because we're running out of money. Which is probably a good decision at the time because we eventually did run out of money.
I know that's story.
But that was one of the projects that I was given to earlier that year. Never came to fruition, but there is a company that is trying to solve this. This company is called Boxy, and they basically are a software company or a fleet management software company that is trying to solve the problem of box trucks and giving them a revenue source and a creative advertising. So I'm going to play this demo video from them. Why? Hold on. There we go.
There's a company I know that does this too, and I'm wondering if this is them.
Well, they did just get bought out, but from what I understand, from what I was reading last night, like they still can kind of operate on their own as an independent entity, but a company called All Over Media, which is responsible for like gas station ads, or like on the actual like gas station, like where you get your gas from, like all those advertisements, they're responsible for that. They do like in-store, placements, just all over media. But this is the video from the Boxy team.
Building a brand, promoting an event, selling a product or service. Introducing Boxy, the nation's largest truck media platform. Boxy is a tech-infused outdoor advertising company that puts massive advertisements on delivery box trucks. Our vehicles are already on the road, driving consistent, high-exposure routes through the most congested and densely populated areas of every city. Tell us where you'd like your ad to be seen, and we'll match your campaign with the perfect trucks that serve the geographic markets you select. Backed with a 24/7 access client dashboard, Boxy provides unmatched transparency, allowing you to monitor every aspect of your campaign, including real-time GPS-based vehicle tracking. With Boxy, you'll always know where and when your ads are being seen. With an average CPM of 50 cents to $1, a Boxy truck is one of the most cost-efficient forms of brand advertising. Run a campaign today and generate real impressions from real people directly in your target markets. In today's skip ahead, swipe away, and tune out world of media, there is no escaping, avoiding, or ignoring a Boxy truck advertisement. Curious what your campaign would look like? Reach out today to build your own using our live inventory dashboard. Your brand deserves the best, so think bigger. Think Boxy.
Smart.
Isn't that crazy?
No, and it is really smart too, because I think a lot of times people don't. You talked about like where they would be driving and things like that. There's a company like it that I had talked to on the radio show, and because you don't consider, like, clearly if you're delivering constantly at Walmart, like, you probably don't want a Kroger ad on the side of your truck, right? So it's like they consider a lot of that kind of stuff that, like you said, like, you might not really think about just on the surface, right?
Well, there's also the added caveat, because the story I just gave when I, was an executive assistant, I was tasked with this role. I asked, before I knew about this company, I asked Matthew Leffler, he's the second time we brought him up in the show. I asked him months ago about that project, and if it would still be, why, more trucking companies aren't doing that and monetizing their fleets in that way. And he said, well, it's a legal liability. Basically, you have these ambulance law chaser firms all around the country that are just looking to target trucking companies in order to get some, a large settlement from accidents. Some rightfully so. A lot of it is very predatory. That's why I call them ambulance chasers. But he said that if you have an advertisement on the side of your show or the side of your truck, then that is an additional, like, I guess, liability issue for those fleets. And so they're just, advised to just not do it. And what's interesting, and I think that the way that Boxy gets around this is that these aren't real delivery trucks, or they are real trucks, but they're not like out there making deliveries. Like, their job is just to drive around in highly congested areas. And so they recruit drivers on their site. Like, they have a tab for drivers to reach out if they're interested. And they got locations or, routes all over the country. And I just thought that was from a marketing perspective, I think that is brilliant. I think that's how you get around a lot of these liability issues, but still get a lot of the same, like, bang for your buck. Because they said it promotes on their website and social media that truck advertising generates 2.5 times more attention than a static billboard, and that comes from perception research. Now, obviously, they're going to list that stat on their site, and they're going to list it in those areas because it's, a proponent of the service that they're offering. But what does your cat feel like is the right move to take?
Oh, she is annoyed by me because I'm sure her food dish is empty and she just wants me to go downstairs and fill it right now. Don't you, sweet baby girl? You're being so good. No, she started me bad. See, she started me bad. Started me bad. So
that's the thing with cats. You can't love them too much.
No. Her Jessica Jones is her name for a reason. She's a monster. No, I think it's really cool. I mean, especially considering, advertising and different trends today. Like, it's, I think, an interesting route as well. Not surprised they got picked up or acquired. That makes sense too. Company.
I think the monitoring of the route is super interesting to me, because we have so many drivers and shippers that are fighting for this kind of technology, and it exists on the advertising trucks, but not necessarily on the high value shipments, which I guess, depending on what you're advertising, maybe you could consider it a high value shipment. But Yeah, I thought that was that's a cool little nugget. Now on to our final segment, source to porch. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Oh, I didn't even bring one for this one. I said,
Not good, but
you said each pick one. I took that as pick one.
oh, I
That
mean,
was
you're
funny. So,
always welcome to have your own source to porch story. I have a good one
so
today.
yeah,
It's
you're gonna have to
related to
run
your
with this.
story. So,
Go for it.
all right, hold on. I'm gonna need to take a drink for this.
I guess my source to porch was Hershey's failure to get the Hershey's to your porch.
Well,
That's a
I'm glad that you brought that up because my
wow.
story is on the chocolate crisis. I don't know
Yes.
if you have been watching this, but it is really fascinating, and I did a deep dive on it last night and this morning. So I'm gonna. Have you ever seen how chocolate is made? Like where it comes from?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's
Well, so we
for
if you go back like 2 or 3 episodes of the stock out, we touch on this a little bit because yeah, it's the prices are insane right now.
yes, the most out of chocolate prices or cacao prices are or cacao trees. So I guess the cocoa that comes from them is trading higher right now than copper. And it's very there's a lot of backstory with it. So if you've never seen where chocolate comes from, I'm going to be playing a video. Sorry for the folks who are, listening to the podcast version. I'm going to play this video as I talk over it of just giving some context into, of course, I can't talk about, a source to porch story without talking about some kind of like historical backstory to it. So hit play and then talk over it. Hopefully there's no volume. Okay, good. Okay, so it's showing like where chocolate comes from. But basically, a little bit of the backstory is that it's a crop native to Central and South America. Like many things, it was very difficult to harvest, so it became a drink for the rich. It also became a form of currency, and that's going to be important here in a second. So the pods are essentially grown on the offshoots of branches of a cacao tree. They look like giant gourds in case you've never seen them. Like it looks
Yeah.
very like alien like the cacao trees. So they look like a gourd. It's kind of like a pumpkin. So they have like the very like hard shell outside, and then you break it open, and inside is like the pulp and like the seeds. So inside it's like the white pulp that surrounds the bean itself, which is removed, fermented, and dried in the sun for a few days, where like the outer crust kind of flakes off and you're left with the actual bean. This bean, from a historical perspective, was super easy to transport, especially compared to other commodities. So it was an ideal crop during colonization when Spain would first start taking the beans back home and sharing it with other wealthy people within Spain. But because it was also seen as currency, it was used by a lot of groups throughout Central and South America. And so Spain, all of their fleets, they would just go up and down the coast trying to meet new tribes, trying to meet new groups, new people throughout Mesoamerica. And when they were doing that, they were using the beans as sort of a way to kind of, break bread with them and, buy things from them because they were using it as a form of currency. This was also during the time that they're scouting for natural resources and they're trying to find out, more gold and silver and, just trying to use the cocoa bean as a way to get them to do that or to get them to trade with them or to just, I guess, steal it from them. This was also during the slave trade era where Spain was obviously, other countries, obviously the English, France, the US, of course, but they were, shipping these beans or the plants itself to African countries, specifically Western African countries like Ghana, the Ivory Coast, and they were forcing them to grow this crop because with the cacao trees, it's very, very it's a very, very sensitive plant. It takes 4 to 5 years in order for that plant to start fruiting, where you get these gourds like what you're seeing here. And
Mhm.
it takes that long. They're also really susceptible to pests. And so it makes it really challenging to grow, and it's also like you have to be like within 20 degrees of like the equator. That's the optimal places where it's going to grow really well. So fast forward to present day, this crop has a global demand with total sales around 116 billion. That's doubled since 2009. And this $116 billion number is expected to still grow about 3.4% year over year, mostly fueled by the growth of dark chocolate, especially among, healthy folks that want to eat chocolate, but they want to do it in a healthier way. Most of the big companies like Cadbury, Hershey, Nestle, they use what's called a bean to bar model, while others use a buy the bar and mix it into their own proprietary blends. So they're just buying like a Hershey bar, or they're buying like a Nestle bar, and then they just blend that into their own proprietary blends and then sell that. West Africa, the Ivory Coast, Ghana in particular, is responsible for around 73% of the total chocolate sales, but they outsource the processing. And apparently where a lot of the money is made is in the processing. So of course you have a situation where, 73% of the market comes out of Western African countries. And so when one thing affects them, it affects a lot of the just global market of having, just having this commodity that you're going to be able to buy. So what happened in last year is that Ghana and the Ivory Coast experienced an El Nino effect where they had a lot of rain, and that rain caused a lot of the trees to just not be suitable for fruiting conditions. There's also a pest that is, when you have a lot of rains, it's more susceptible to get that pest. And when you have that pest, the entire farm is just ruined. You have to uproot the trees and then burn the fields and then start over. And it takes 4 to 5 years for those crops to become fruiting again. So what's happening is a lot of like illegal gold miners are now coming into those farmlands and saying, hey, we'll give you regular money to let us dig on your property. And then if you let us dig on your property, then then you don't have to, you're going to get regular income. You don't have to worry about being a farmer anymore, because farmers are making the least out of everyone. A lot of child labor is also involved in farming cocoa. And so keeping those, I guess, extenuating circumstances in mind, like these people, like they're already not making a lot of money by farming this commodity. And then you have some other, nefarious actors that are coming in and taking advantage of the other natural resources that they have on their land by taking gold. And that's just an easy fix for them. And it's a guaranteed source of revenue. So it's really like a particular situation that they have found themselves in, where these farmers, they're only getting out of that, 116 billion. They currently only get about 20 to 30% of that total market. And then it's just all of these extenuating circumstances where now we have entered into the chocolate crisis because of those different weather patterns, because of all the sort of geopolitical issues that are going on. So we have this astronomical increase in pricing for chocolate. And I mean, if you're looking at the screen, like it hit $10,000, which, I was listening to Odd Lots podcast, and they said typically commodities trade around the $5,000 mark. A record was actually set in 1977 for chocolate prices that hit the $5,000 mark, but now we are double. So now it's finally at the $10,000 mark. And just to keep things kind of in perspective, this is a lot of the farmers aren't incentivized to grow. They also, Ghana, Ivory Coast, they want to take more control of the processing of it, because that's where they make more money. And so a lot of these bigger conglomerates like the Hershey's of the world, Nestle's, Cadbury, a lot of these big conglomerates are buying up the chocolate reserves, but then also under investing in the farms themselves. And so it's like, this perfect storm of bad events that are coming through that are causing cocoa prices to surge more than 250% over the last year, surging to $10,000 per metric ton. That's $10,000 per metric ton, nearly double the record high set 46 years ago. It's more money right now for chocolate than it is copper. So it's really that's my source to porch story, where this year we're going to be facing with shrinkflation, and then also the higher prices for some of your favorite chocolate goods. Apparently there's also like just this insane market of people who buy like super high end chocolate where it's like the tiniest piece. This
Yeah.
Odd Lots episode costs like $35 because it has to go through so much different processing and shipping. But the actual growers, the actual farmers of that product, don't really see a lot of the benefits for that. Like I said, they're making around 20 to 30% of that $116 billion number, and a lot of that funnels through the government. So the government, some of these countries don't exactly, I mean, not to say that the US does either, but some of these countries don't exactly operate on the up and up. And so they make their own personal side deals with the bigger conglomerates, like the bigger chocolate companies. And so they get their kickbacks. And then the farmers who are actually doing the majority of the work suffer the ramifications of that. And then when the market prices dramatically increase like this, they're not seeing those profits because it's a controlled market for countries like Ghana and Ivory Coast, where it works well when the price is low because farmers get a certain amount of money, but when the price goes sky high like it is now, they're not getting any extra money. And you have a situation where you have these big companies that are hoarding the cocoa beans for their own benefit. So yeah, that is the chocolate crisis that's going on. So if you see cheap chocolate out there, I guess beware. But then also just know that it's probably not the best. I heard that Cadbury like changed their chocolate source from Ghana to somebody else, and just the Cadbury chocolate fans just had an uprising, like went to social media, like complained about it, and got Cadbury to change back to Ghana as their chocolate supplier.
Yeah, it's a big issue. We talked about it, like you said, a couple weeks on the stock out, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, like you said, watch for this shrinkflation, or prices are just going to stay high on that for a period of time. So I mean, that's what struggle is when it's a food source, right? That you technically can't get year round, but unfortunately want year round. So I expect candy in Halloween times, right, to not be that great.
Well, apparently it came to fruition because Easter holiday, there's a lot of
Yes.
chocolate being consumed. And
Mhm.
there, one more quick note that I did want to give is because we have a third lower of production for this year versus last year. So that's where a lot of like the extra costs and shrinkflation is going to come into play. But then very interestingly, there is in London, so I guess sort of reverse colonialism. The
Yeah.
British chocolate greenhouse is trying to save the world's cocoa. Basically, they have a greenhouse that keeps the optimal temperatures, and they have resistant to certain pests. But it's a whole. They're trying to, I guess, sort of pin themselves as the International Cocoa Quarantine Center, and so it simulates tropical conditions where they're basically a very difficult plant is made easy to maintain. And then they sell these seedlings or they sell these cuttings to farmers all over the world. But then the catch is kind of, well, you got to buy the pesticides and the fertilizers in order to help, take care of those cuttings that you're buying. And then you're still waiting about 4 to 5 years for those crops to come to fruition. So it's kind of like a roundabout supply chain way of saying, stock up on your chocolate because it's just going to get more expensive.
Yeah, thank God I'm more of a fruity person, right? I'm more of a pie than a brownie person, but yeah, watch it. And like I said, don't expect those prices to come down anytime soon when it comes to what you're buying at the grocery store. That's for sure.
All right. Well, we were supposed to stop about 20 minutes ago. Both of us, have other things that we have to do.
I know. I'm like emails. I'm like, yeah.
So we're gonna cut it at this moment. Great show again, Grace. What are you working on? Where can folks follow your work? All that good stuff.
So if you I'll have an article out by the time this comes out on some of the people I met at MATS. So go check that out. Some cool companies there. But of course, go to LinkedIn, Twitter. Check out the link tree, which I actually need to update today too. So I'll work on that, and go check out the stock out too. On that, go to freightwaves.com, click on newsletters at the top of the page, join the stock out, and you'll also get a discount code in your newsletter for our June event from June 4th to the 5th in Atlanta. We're actually planning that out now.
Chain?
Yeah, future supply chain. I'll be there a day early too for a private event as well, doing all these private things. So yeah, excited for that, and excited for another episode with you, of course. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Another great episode, and we'll get going to our other duties for today. But hopefully, everybody enjoyed the wide range of topics that we cover
yeah,
on the show.
Expect more JLo content from us next time.
Just set me up. I'll knock it down.
I love it.
Her and Meghan Markle. I got the smoke for both of y'all.